Hello everyone. My name is Paul Stevens and welcome to this short-term rentals webinar on social and corporate responsibility, force for good in travel and tourism, sponsored by Key Data and Logify. I'm the editor of Short-Term Rentals here at International Hospitality Media and the host for today's session. And before we begin, let's introduce our first webinar sponsor for today. A few details here about Key Data, and we've also got a video to show.
It's actually helped us increase our revenue because what it allowed us to do was look at, for example, as an example, a two-bedroom property in a specific area and look at what the benchmarked ADR is for that and what the occupancy is. And we found that in some areas, our ADR was actually less than the market average.
So a big thank you to Key Data for sponsoring this webinar and our series. And now let's introduce our second webinar series sponsor. This is Logify.
Try Logify and increase the revenue of your vacation rental business. Create your bookable vacation rental website. Select a template. Upload your rental information and share it with the world in minutes. With Logify, you can connect to booking portals, manage all your reservations, stay in touch with your guests, and automate time-consuming tasks. Go to logify.com and grow your bookings today.
And a big thank you, of course, to Logify too. And just a reminder of the code, you can also use the code, which you can see on screen now, STR10 in capitals, to get 10% off yearly and bi-yearly ultimate and professional plans with Logify. So we will repeat that at the end too. Big thank you to Logify for that. So let's go ahead and introduce our speaker lineup for today. And why don't I start with Nick, you're on the left, so I'll start with you.
Thank you very much, and glad to be here. Thanks for having me. Nick Meekins, I'm CEO and co-founder of LuxGive, and I've been in the short-term rental industry for just about 20 years now as part of the management team at two of the leading luxury villa rental companies. That was before founding LuxGive, where we have the very unique opportunity to use our industry background to create luxury travel packages, but specifically for nonprofits to use as a vehicle for raising funds. And happy to be here.
Thank you, Nick. Delighted to have you here. Next up, we've got Joanna from our sponsor, Logify.
Hello, and thanks for having me. So I work as the HR business partner in Logify, who, as you've already had the chance to see, is the all-in-one platform for independent hosts and property managers to empower and expand their businesses. And my perspective is going to be, I guess, maybe slightly different because I'm going to take the very internal lens on the employee experience as the source of CSV, even though, of course, our marketing team does provide also a lot of informative materials dedicated to sustainable tourism. So go ahead and take a look at it. Glad to be here. Thanks.
Thank you, Joanna. Next, we have Ed from Simpson Travel.
Thanks, Paul. Great to be here. I'm Ed. I'm the Managing Director of Simpson Travel. We are an outbound UK travel company to Europe and Turkey. We kind of bridge two areas because we're short-term rentals. We're a premium villa rental company. That's the vast majority of what we do. We also have a boutique hotel collection as well. So we're dealing with situations from a short-term rentals perspective because a lot of what we do is exclusive to us in property-wise. And we're also dealing with sort of travel intricacies around airlines and car rental and things like that.
Thank you very much, Ed. And last but my name is Lise. We've got Mike from Travel Chapter.
Thank you so much. I'm Mike Oakey. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of Travel Chapter. I'm a newbie though. So I see Nicholas has been with the industry 20 years. I'm only 1 year here. So 1 year with Travel Chapter. and 1 year in the travel industry, but I have been a marketer for about 20 years prior to that, and always had a keen interest in ESG and CSR. So yeah, I represent Travel Chapter, and we're one of the UK's leading holiday letting agencies. And our flagship brand in the UK is holidaycottages.co.uk, where we've got about 15,000 properties.
Thank you, Mike. We love to be very diverse with the experience on our panel. So great to have you and all of our panelists here today. Looking forward to our discussion. So some webinar guidelines for today. All of the details are going to be posted in the chat throughout. So please do go there to ask any of our panelists a question at any time. We'll have a panel discussion leading into audience questions, and then a recording will be sent round to everyone within the next 48 hours or so. Before we begin though, let's just put today's conversation into a bit of context. Firstly, with LuxGive's 2023 year of giving back, in which it measured social and philanthropy impact according to donations, non-profit causes, volunteer days, charity miles as well. So we're going to be discussing a lot more of that with Mike, with Nick. Airbnb.co there, one of the stories that we've written on short-term rentals, another company that we've reported on very extensively as it aims to build the future of community-powered tourism and social innovation, which is really driving some of the models that we're seeing now in the industry. For governance, we'll be discussing Travel Chapter's B Corp status with Mike, while Airbnb.org, Airbnb's charitable arm, has been supporting survivors of Hurricane Helene over the past couple of weeks over in the United States. So really bringing the industry together. And in the news, we've also covered Simpson Travel's private equity backing from Risk Capital Partners back in March. I'm sure there'll be plenty of time to discuss that with Ed, as well as a new profit venture, but a new non-profit venture that we launched last week, the International Centre for Responsible Tourism Global, or ICRT Global. Congratulations, Debbie and the team, if you're tuning in. All of the links to those are in the chat. And you can also view Lodgify's previous short-term rentals webinar back in July, when we discussed all things digital transformation with Joanna's colleague, Anila. So let's really get into the heart of the discussion. Nick, I'm going to start with you. Great to have you here with us. And you mentioned there your 20 years of experience in the industry. I'll probably make that the last mention for you. But you've been with LuxGive now since 2019. This is what I think this is a really important conversation that we're having today, that sometimes gets slid under the carpet a little bit and made to feel like an elephant in the room. Why, in your opinion, has the industry been accused of neglecting its ESG responsibilities perhaps today?
Yeah, thanks for dating me, first of all, again. No, really, it's an important conversation to have. And the travel industry, I think, has been faced with some real valid criticism for sometimes, well, often prioritizing profits over people and the planet. There's issues like exploitative labor practices or environmental damage, cultural insensitivities, and have also cast a shadow over the industry. And I think particularly in the luxury industry as well, in luxury travel, where it's kind of associated with excess and waste, and obviously rich people go abroad, that might not be the first thing on their mind. And I think there is a disconnect between sort of the luxury travel experiences enjoyed by tourists and the realities faced by the local communities that they're visiting. And that can actually lead to resentment and a feeling that tourism benefits aren't being shared equally, with the destinations that they're going to. So I think it's a real important topic to address.
And I mean, with LuxGive, and we'll be touching on this later as well in the conversation, but you've got quite a unique business model that sort of straddles experiences, accommodation, concierge, and very rooted in the luxury travel market. So do you see things shifting and moving for the better towards and away from these profit at all costs business models?
Absolutely. And in fact, I was looking at a study recently from Virtuoso where I think 73% of affluent travelers are willing to pay more for sustainable travels, for different travel options, sustainable. And at Luxiv, I guess we're a little bit a unique position here because we're addressing this by connecting luxury travel with philanthropy at the time of sale. So we help nonprofits raise funds by auctioning off these incredible travel experiences around the world and ensuring that tourism dollars directly benefit local communities that they're from. We then go this step further to try and help the local communities that they're visiting as well on the back end, because we know that our clients are philanthropists at heart, and they want to see that their dollars are going beyond just the cause that they helped at home. So knowing that there's something built into the experience that they have on location, I think is really important for them. So we are seeing a real trend to even just outside of the market that we're in, where people are looking for more responsible travel options.
Thank you for that, Nick. I'll turn to Ed next. Ed, you mentioned in your intro that your business at Simpson Travel sort of spans across villas, apartments, boutique hotels. So in some ways linked to that luxury segment of the market too. From your experience in the industry, do you think that the industry has sort of swept ESG responsibilities under the carpet? Maybe why do you think they would have been accused of neglecting those?
I think it's changing, I'd say, Paul, in the first instance, and it has been changing for a few years, and it's amazing to see how many travel industry companies are qualifying for things like B Corp these days to really put a stamp on it, and I'm sure that trend will continue to grow. I think there's a specific B Corp travel group now in the UK to share best practice and connect people with each other and discuss these kind of issues. So I think it's changing, and it's growing, and it's developing. Inherent, certainly, in what we do, inherent in our proposition is putting people on a plane and flying them into Europe, short haul flights, but with the way of the world from a carbon perspective and carbon consumption. It has become, I think, a bit of a scapegoat inherently in the act of travel to bring someone to a different destination, but it can be done absolutely in the right way. I mean, one of our original straplines as a company is the road less traveled. It's kind of within our DNA to search and find places that are not mass tourism, that are slightly off the beaten track, and also for us, what we do, the road less traveled, is literal, but it's also figurative in terms of it's not about taking shortcuts. It's not about finding the easy path. These things are hard to do, but recognized. I think Nick made a very good point on the Virtuoso comment. Guests seeking reassurance that their travel provider is acting in the best in the best way, but you can't escape some of the headlines that we've seen over the last year on over tourism in hugely crowded destinations. And, the challenge is back to the industry to educate and share alternative destinations and alternative locations so that it's not concentrated in one area, leading to, people having issues with living in that area and working in that area.
Do you think then in some ways maybe that the media is playing a part in some of these shifts and is responsible for changing things for the better and towards more sustainable tourism?
I think it's holding a mirror up. Yeah, why not? Why should we not hold a mirror up to local issues that are going on to make people, reading their broadsheet newspaper on a Sunday, the Sunday Times in the UK, they've run several articles over the summer around places. We operate in Mallorca. We're not in Palma, where it's seen the highest levels of sort of dispute there with the local community. But we should hold a mirror up to ourselves, of course, and should look at ways that we can branch out and educate people on alternative ways to travel and traveling in a socially responsible way.
Thank you for that, Ed. Next up, Mike, with Travel Chapter, we we talked about in our introductions that you're a relatively new entrant to the travel sector too. Does this perhaps sort of give you a different perspective on how or whether the industry really has sort of kept its eye on ESG?
Yeah. I mean, it's difficult, right? The very inherent nature of traveling has to have some sort of environmental impact, unfortunately, and therefore it's about a balance of when you do have to make that environmental impact, because your company is about travel and flights, that you make the right decisions when there is a balance to be had. And I think that's fundamentally what it comes down to. I think if you're not making the right decisions as a business, where there is an opportunity to have a more responsible way to do something, then that's where the problem arises. I think customers will be able to spot that really easily, that when there is the opportunity there, then you should always take it. So yeah, I completely agree. It has been fascinating to see that coming in from only a year in. And it's hard to see because I don't know the old world previously, but I feel like this industry talks an awful lot about this actually, and I think it's really. I mean, maybe it wasn't maybe 5 years ago, but certainly a lot of the conversations we have around Travel Chapter, everything starts with, "Is this the right thing to do here?" And I would imagine that's the same for a lot of the industry as well.
Is it being talked about more now in travel, do you think, than it was in the previous sectors that you've worked in?
Yeah, so my background is kind of retail, financial services, etc. And whilst it's considered important, this feels a really, really important hot topic within this industry. But I look back at our B Corp submission, and our B Corp submission was really more of a reflection about what we were doing anyway and getting the certification, rather than having to make major fundamental changes to the org. And as I said, it's before my time, but our green initiatives go all the way back to 2019, and full audits about what we do. Even going through the bins about what waste is being thrown away, etc. And I think if you put it at the core of your industry, at the core of your business, then that's a really, really good start to doing the right thing.
And we'll be touching on that on B Corp status and what exactly that means and how one applies for that a little bit later. So thank you. We haven't really covered too much about governance yet. So Joanna, I know you've got some slides to show for Logify about some of the initiatives that you're doing and bring positive impact to the industry.
Yeah, happy to talk about that, but I also really wanted to highlight and maybe bounce off from what Mike just said about putting the sustainability and responsibility at the core of what you're doing as an organization. Something that I've experienced previously is that when we talk about ESG or sustainability, what comes to mind are these big strategies that we have to do it with a bank. And from my experience and from what I see working well is really basically integrating it in the flow of work, because sometimes it's pretty difficult to convince people around you that we should be doing something extra. But if it's already in the activities that you are doing anyway, it's way easier to actually keep doing the good thing. And like the way that we approach it is really try to ask ourselves two important questions. One is, who is going to be impacted by what we do? And we try to look internally, but also outside at other people, but also at the planet, if we can think about the planet as a person to be impacted. And then like what it is that we can keep doing better. I mean, iterating is one of the core values, so we want to keep doing better. And if you sort of build the habit of asking yourself these two questions, it becomes natural, it becomes integrated in the flow of work. And because you mentioned, Paul, you mentioned the initiatives. Again, looking from the internal perspective, the way that I look at it is through employee life cycle. So from the moment we want to attract somebody to the moment that they are within the organization, then they grow, develop, and exit. And the way that we do it is at each of these critical touch points, we ask ourselves those two questions. Who is going to be impacted and how we can do it better? So is it...
We've got some slides to bring up now, actually. So why don't we do that? Illustrate those.
Let's do that. Yeah. So here we have our two important questions: who is impacted and how to increase the positive and decrease the negative impact. So if we take a look at the employee life cycle, which I have on the other slide, I put some examples, but if we look at the entire flow from the moment that we want to actually get somebody in through their entire stay with us up until the exit, you ask ourselves, okay, who is impacted and what do we do? Do we make sure that we are only using the local vendors, for example? Do we avoid excessive travel costs? And by costs, I mean not only financial, but also the carbon cost. Reducing carbon emissions is something that has been a big topic for us last year, and going paperless when it comes to our documentation has been a huge help. Like, I'm sure nobody likes signing papers, and doing it virtually, it's a huge help. But something that's also very important to us is the human aspect, which is making sure that we offer good working conditions, which means taking care of the wellness, of the health of our employees, making sure that they have enough leave, for example, when they need this, but also making sure that they grow and develop, and that anything that we set up for them in terms of processes is fair and transparent. Again, we can keep getting better, but those are the things that they do make the difference.
Thank you very much, Joanna, and lots more to come from Logify in this conversation too. I really want to stick on exactly some of the initiatives that you as speakers are all adopting within your companies. So, Ed, specifically with Simpson Travel, I read that you're rooted very much in the local community. It's also looking at charity and environmentally friendly initiatives. Could you just expand on exactly what you're doing?
Yeah, I think firstly I would say that short stay rentals is in a great position because unlike some other travel sectors, let's say all inclusive or cruise, and well, both of which I'm sure have CSR action plans, etc. But with a short stay rental, what we do is you're living and interacting with the local community. You're purchasing from the shop down the road. You're buying the services in of a private chef. You're spending money on the boat hire. You're spending money in restaurants. So I think it's giving back to local businesses in the local community by being there. For us, we're very lucky because we have boots on the ground. We've got 70 concierge team who work in a dedicated, exclusive way for us throughout Europe. So they're able to make local initiatives happen, both from, which is broadly for us, split into two kind of pillars. A what we call our green agenda. It's not very imaginative as a name, but it does the job, gets the point across. Our green agenda, which is about, of course, ensuring that we're set up from an environment perspective in the best way. So things like we've looked at in the past, we do welcome packs. So how do we reduce the plastic in our welcome packs, swap it for glass bottled water? We've put bags for life in all of our villas. So when you go in, you get a bag for life to take down to the shop and yours to take home, etc. We look at things like Brita water filters or under-the-counter water filtration systems that mean there's less reliance on bottled water, essentially, and buying that in. And on the second sort of pillar, charity and giving back to the local community, we operate in a very bottom-up way with our teams here. So we like them to select a charity that means something to them. Often it runs into two sort of general themes: local wildlife. A lot of the destinations that we're in they struggle with cat and dog populations, etc. But it could be tortoise in Greece, etc. Tortoise. Or they often it's a cancer charity, because many of our team or relatives of our team have been impacted by cancer. And they go out and fundraise to give back to local community charities. So we don't say, okay, you need to raise money to donate to the British Wildlife Trust or something like that. No, it's local to them, and it's community support for their communities. So they will choose the cancer charity locally, and they will put on guest get-togethers. We've seen fashion shows, we've seen meetups, barbecues, drinks, a cruise on a boat, gala dinner cruise sort of thing in different destinations. Sponsored yoga, where the yoga teacher is giving up their time and the donation is going to charity there. So lots of different ways to impact locally, along with broader things like sponsoring charity initiatives in the local community from local wildlife charities and green charities that have been set up, like the Turtles, etc., and doing what we can to assist them.
Why do you think maybe what you're talking about there, roots-based, bottom-up approach is better than the top-down approach, which you may see more of in the industry?
I think, if you invite people to submit their own ideas and you get collaboration, collaboration essentially leads to buy-in leads to ownership leads to accountability, and suddenly it's very, 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 very powerful, because they don't have to be sent central requests or directives to get on with these things. It's just organically happens in resort. They want to support their local community. What we do as well is the team that we have are in their local communities. They're residents of their local communities. So we don't bring in kind of reps from overseas to do a summer there and leave. So these people do want to make a direct impact to their local communities. As you give them a framework to work in, and as long as there's the framework behind it, then the local ownership we find works really well. I mean, this year we will raise probably 20,000 euros, something like that, from our local teams, charity fundraise, plus the additional sort of green fundraising points. For example, we encourage all our teams at the start, in a week in April at the start of our season, to go and clean the beaches, to go and pick up from the local beaches, and support those efforts. So we've got a number of things going on to really give back to the communities.
Thank you for that, Ed. Really, really interesting to learn more about what you're doing at Simpson Travel. I'm going to jump now to Nick. And Nick, we haven't really talked that much about LuxGive and what your business model actually entails, because it is quite unique, both from a luxury travel and a philanthropic perspective. So how does it all work? How do you combine these two different angles? Sorry, Nick, are you on mute?
I am indeed.
There you
are. Sorry, I was saying, as I mentioned before, we are fortunate to be at that cross section of travel and philanthropy. And the way that LuxGive works is we've tapped into this trend by offering sort of a unique opportunity for nonprofits to have access to luxury travel. They auction that off at their fundraising events to donors. They pay a fulfillment cost to us to fulfill the trip, so we take all that off their plate. Everything that we know that goes along with the short-term rental, for instance, the linens, the toiletries, the check-in, the checkouts, oh, my AC is not working properly, or whatever it is. The nonprofits aren't well equipped to handle that. They're not travel people, and short-term rentals, as you know, comes with a variety of different challenges that you have to overcome. Local knowledge in each of the destinations. And ordinarily what would happen is those nonprofits would go and get a donation from one of their donors, their beach house, the keys to their beach house. Great. They auction it off for $10,000, $15,000. They've raised these funds. They can sell out once in their auction to generate some excitement on the day. And then what happens to fulfillment? They're left picking up the pieces. Oh, when is it available? How do we get someone to open the door for them? Or how do we get them the keys even? And oh, great, there's personal effects everywhere. So this is where we kind of come in and we provide our background and our sort of white glove concierge service to set them up with the right state, but then also make sure they're pre-stocking the groceries, the chef service if they want that, and everything that kind of goes along with a short-term rental that's needed to make sure that's up to the caliber of these high net worth individuals. So that's how we kind of marry it together. But I think, we take it beyond that. So that's built into our business model itself. And I think it's important to kind of take a step further than that to show some authenticity, if you like. And, what we've done, we have a variety of different sort of initiatives internally. And that's, for instance, we have 3 volunteer days per employee per year that we go out and we give to our local communities to cause that are important to us. For everyone's birthday, I know small little things like this, but everyone's birthday, we donate to a cause that's important to them on their behalf as a company, and we share that with the rest of the team. And I think a lot of it, it's not just the dollars, and we donate tens of thousands of dollars from our own profits each year to different causes and for these efforts, but it's raising awareness. And enough times, I have something that's close to me and something that's important to me, but then you get awareness about some other cause and what kind of impact that has on their local community. And I think that's one of the true sort of benefits that you can gain from having these kind of practices internally. There's the obvious ones, I think, as well, where we're talking about more sustainability in terms of travel. And you look at it and you say, tourism accounts for about 8% of all greenhouse gases. And then you look at commuting as an example, that's 20% of greenhouse gases estimated. And that's a real interesting fact to say that you can actually start that change from home as well. So we have a completely distributed workforce. And no one has to go in the office. I think we're all pretty much working from home here as well. And so we're kind of doing our part with that. We go paperless. There's no need for paper. I don't need to pass anything anyway. So we're digital, to Joanna's point. And it really is sort of just making sure that's part of the core company culture. And, that starts with, I think, getting the right people that believe in that as well. So we introduce screening questions when we are hiring in the hiring process to make sure that, it doesn't really matter even sort of which cause, but that you have a passion for giving back and that you do feel some connection to that incentive. And, that's really how we try and make a difference. Again, our business model, we do that. We've raised over 25 million now for nonprofits in let's call it 2.5 years, 3 years of business that's we've been in play here. But that's really our business model. And then you take that to the company and the company culture, and we donated a huge amount to the local causes, international relief agencies, when there's international disasters. And it's just about, what do we feel, it makes us fulfilled in work. Yes, there's the work part, but then there's also, you go home in your local community, what are things that you care about. A local orphanage in Turks and Caicos, we donated gifts to them. That's kind of a random thing when you're thinking Turks and Caicos. It's pretty a high net worth individual island, if you like, but there still are communities locally that don't benefit from those tourism dollars coming through, or the banking dollars, or however their economy runs on. So that's really what we try and do across the board. Incentivize train travel as an example. But yeah, there's a host of different ways.
Yeah, those are some really, really impressive achievements, Nick. So congrats to you and the team on what you're doing at LuxGive. Plenty more to discuss there about the business model, but Mike, back to you with B Corp. We've discussed it in some elements so far, but for those maybe who don't know exactly what the B Corp status is, could you just talk a little bit about what it is and how Travel Chapter also came to get this status?
Yeah, of course. So being part of B Corp status is a process that you go through where you are audited and verified by an independent body, and they look across multiple different social, responsible governance type of areas of your business, such as human rights, climate action, workplace culture, etc. And you're graded across each of these and have to provide evidence across each of these different areas. And those businesses which achieve a certain threshold are given a B Corp status, which really is a rubber stamp to say that you're doing the right thing across multiple different areas of the business. I have to say it's not an easy thing to do. It's a long process. But I think the long process is overall a good thing because it shows that everyone else who's also B Corp has also gone through the long process, and therefore there's no corners cut. So it's something that we're incredibly proud of. We think it's important for us ourselves wanting to belong to a business which is recognised as B Corp, but we also think it will help long-term bookings for and help long-term homeowners who want to come onto the platform as well. So we think it is has a strong commercial benefit as well as just being simply the right thing to do within the industry.
I believe you also have to sort of reapply. Is it every 3 years? Is it to be verified for it? So
yeah, it's moving as well. Yeah, so you'll get re-verification through there as well. But we kind of your score isn't static over time. So what we will be looking at is going further and further about how we can be better in this area. Yeah.
How important do you think I guess you covered it in some way already, but to actually have that accreditation, we're in a period now when some companies get accused of greenwashing, rightly or wrongly. But for you with B Corp, how does that how is that differentiated from that accusation, perhaps?
Greenwashing is an interesting one. I have to say, coming into this, and again, I don't know if this is a timing thing, just as is because it's become more and more important to more and more people. But certainly for the other industries that I've worked in, I felt that those industries have given more greenwashing statements and actually done less good. And actually, I look at my industry and I look at our business in particular, and I actually think we are worried about the perception of greenwashing and actually tend to talk less about the actual achievements that we've done here. I think B Corp is really useful because it's a formal, recognised, global message which we can put out there. So I think that really helps. But yeah, I think it's really important. And as I say, I think it's important for two reasons. One reason is it's just the right thing to do, and that helps from employer retention, and helps from homeowner retention, helps for more customers, which leads to better commercial outcomes for doing so. And as soon as you can tie a strong commercial outcome to doing the right thing, then it becomes an awful lot easier.
Thank you very much, Mike. Very interesting to learn about the B Corp and the status and how one goes about applying for it. So hopefully some very useful information if anyone there is thinking of doing the same in the audience too. Now we've got an article came up, and I used this also to promote the session a couple of days ago. So maybe we can bring that up on the next slide. We got it. Okay, I can't see it at the moment, but we've got an article about, and it's called "ESG is Dead. Long Live Responsible Business" by Simon Freakley, Chairman and CEO of Alex Partners. And there was an interesting paragraph, so I'll try and paraphrase somewhat, but it said, in the US, political pressure has caused many companies and investors to scale back their ESG commitment. And at a global level, ESG has also been subject to some overhype, creating confusion over its purpose and how to measure impact. And for many, it's become a buzzword for all of the non-financial risks that companies face. So no one's measuring, reporting and investing on ESG principles have proved a challenge. So Nick, I might throw this one at you slightly because it's slightly more US centered. Do you think ESG is something that is a step in the right direction, or is it being overhyped, as this author says?
I mean, I would never want to say something that's has a net positive impact is overhyped in a way. So you don't want to discredit that or devalue it in any way. I don't think it's personally, I don't think it's necessary. I don't think you have to adhere to that by that same conduct, if you like, in order to have a net positive impact as well. And I think that's where I think a lot of companies, especially startups, they get started and you're looking at, okay, how can we create a positive, company culture? How can we communicate better and appeal to our clients? And I think you're seeing that companies that do prioritize social environmental responsibility often do see that positive impact on their bottom line as well. So it's almost built into an incentive to have these actions. Customers, they're increasingly seeking out businesses that align with their values, ours more so than anyone, because we're literally working with nonprofits. But it's really inherent to, I think, a lot of business practices. So I think it's great that there is a set of, a code that you can be evaluated on and you can be held accountable for. I think for large organizations, that is it's important. As a smaller organization, I think it needs to be just core to what you're doing. And yes, use some of those principles. And, if you're looking at sort of the impact that you have to climate change or, pollution, waste, biodiversity, everything, it is important to kind of recognize what impact you're having in a negative way. We have business travel. We literally send people on planes and jets across the world for luxury travel. Be very aware of it. And then also have a view in mind of how you can counter that, both internally with your company and with your clients.
I'm not sure if any of our other speakers want to come in there. If you want to, then you can raise your hand. If not, we'll move on to the next point. And it's really about fulfilling our responsibilities and creating a diverse workforce. And I want to look at how that can lead to positive impact. So with Joanna at Logify, I'll come to you first on this, because as you say, you a very spread out workforce at Logify, and you yourself are based in Barcelona. What sort of feedback are you getting from your employers and what employees, and what can you learn from it?
Yeah, this is a great point, because one thing that I believe is very relevant is that if you want to do the CSR well, you need to hear from the people who are affected. And like in our case, this is, of course, primarily employees. So what we hear, I think, plays very much into what Nick just said, that being sustainable, being responsible really increases the bottom line. And the feedback that we get from our employees is all about how the diversity of our company is one of the biggest positives that they see. They see this as a huge value. And something that I find really encouraging is also that they request more transparency, that they take interest in the areas of governance. So some examples of feedback that we've been getting are about if we organize a company event for our employees, they do take interest about how we are going to travel and what sort of providers are we going to use. When we talk about the internal governance, they are really keen to know about the processes and procedures that we set up. Are they equitable? Are they free of bias? So there is really a lot that you can learn. And because I do believe that on your own, you are going to come up with a lot of ideas, but if you reach out to people who are affected, you are going to get insights that you yourself would never think of. So yeah, this feedback loop has been absolutely critical.
Thank you for that, Joanna. Back to you, Ed, with Simpson Travel. How important is like the charity fundraising and the community focus to your business? And what do you see? How do you see that developing in the future too?
Yeah, so it's an interesting point, and to sort of dovetail into your ESG dead point as well, Paul. Now, it does appear from the reading that I do that there is some potential stigma creeping in around the phrase ESG. You can see that in other sectors, that the focus, the sort of, you have to reflect society a bit in a bit of a move towards an anti-woke backlash. And I think the important thing to remember, and might not be popular to say, but a business, unless you're a not-for-profit, a business is there to make money, and that's what shareholders ultimately want to see. It's the reason, you know, the business exists is to make money. And I think therefore you can have supporting pillars and do this in the right way and have it embedded in your business. And for us, as I said, it's hugely important for the team overseas, you know, having targeting them and setting objectives that are not just based around commercial performance or guest experience, etc., but based around the community and responsible tourism. It gives a great different string to their bow. They're not just being, you know, directed to deliver a fantastic experience. You know, they're being directed to support the local communities that they're operating in. So that is fantastic, and it should be a supporting pillar. But I guess what I'm saying, and probably related to some of the backlash, is that you can't allow it to take over as the primary objective. It's a supporting pillar. The primary objective of the business is still to make money. Let's do it in the best and right way and most ethical way that we can, and give back to those communities. But you can't scrap the objectives on making money or scrap the guest experience objectives and just say your role exists to purely do ESG from a frontline perspective.
Mike, is there anything you want to add, either from what Ed said or from your own experience with a diverse workforce at Travel Chapter?
Yeah, I think diverse workforce is critical. I mean, and more so it's been recognised, which is great. I think the more diverse a workforce, the greater the innovation, the more you can differentiate, helps us build better products, which actually reflects our market and our customers, helps us improve product, you know, problem solving, increased employee retention, etc. I think it's not always easy to find the most diverse workforce, though, and certainly we're a business which has got head office in local regions and small offices all throughout the country, and not always in the most in the areas with the biggest, most diverse workforce, and therefore attracting them to that area and how you have remote working, etc., is really, really important to do so. So yeah, I just completely agree with what Joanna was saying on that. Yeah.
That's a great point there. I want to place the focus back now on the scrutiny of ESG impact. So Nick, you're probably well placed to talk about this. How do you see, maybe we've said the news is putting the focus on over tourism and scrutiny on the sector, but how is technology, social media and other factors going to increase and add more scrutiny on these responsibilities?
Yeah, I mean, it does. I think you mentioned social media, online reviews, you know, that amplifies the voice of the travelers, and local communities, makes it easier to hold companies accountable for their actions. And so there is more scrutiny, a more accessible scrutiny, I think, in real time in a lot of ways. And I think that should be welcomed, because that's the market kind of telling you as well what you should do to respond to, you know, to Ed's point of, like, you're there to be a business, you're there to attract your clients, to appeal to them. You know, we're seeing that, you know, there was a booking.com study that came out saying that, you know, 83% of travelers, you know, want to book travel that gives back to the local community. That's a huge number. And if you're open and transparent about what you're doing to that, then you're going to attract the kind of customers that you want, and you're going to attract 83% of them apparently as well. And in an environment where it's so competitive, you're always looking for an edge over your competitors. That's one of the easy ways you can point to say, okay, this is how I can attract that client over my competitors. If you're not doing it, you're behind. Likewise, I think to the point of the workforce, you know, as Mike was saying, you know, to attract and retain a workforce is super important. You know, to have creating a diverse, inclusive workforce, it brings in different perspectives and ideas, and it ultimately leads to better decision making and a stronger company culture. So people do inherently want to work for companies that are making a difference. And I think we all know it's also competitive to attract talent and to retain talent. So I think, yes, we should be scrutinized. I think every area, not just travel, is today. This is one that's probably an easy target because of, like I said, that sort of easy line to draw between sort of waste and travel. But I'm a huge advocate of travel, not just because it's my business and my career here, but also because I think, as you get exposed to more cultures, you get an education and appreciation for other cultures and other people and other communities. So, we obviously have a real focus on giving back to our local communities from where people come from. That's where our sales originate. But having your eyes open when you visit other countries, and I've lived in India, in Ghana, in Argentina, and I can say, a large part of I think my feelings towards giving back to international communities comes from that exposure and seeing that that there are needs in so many different areas. So I think travel is a hugely important piece to that puzzle. And it's up to us to try and find ways to make it more sustainable. And I think I love the attention that it's getting.
Thank you, Nick. Ed, is there anything you want to add there on some of the positive opportunities that you can leverage from this?
I mean, I think what our next phase in this is talking to our supply chain. That's what we're kind of working on at the moment. Our villa owners, our hotel owners, etc., and trying to educate them and share best practice. And some fantastic work that various organisations do, like Astonica, in terms of certification. Anything that can be done to audit, to educate, to share best practice, to help essentially a lot of the time save them money by making better procurement choices in their properties. That for us, that is our next challenge, and where we will focus on in the coming year.
Thank you, Ed. Joanna, anything you'd like to add? That do you think the added scrutiny is a good thing for a business like Lodgify, whether it be investors, partners, or looking at your own employee?
Yeah, I think, this is a very interesting contrast that we keep hearing throughout this conversation, in which we all talk about how this topic is highlighted, especially in the travel industry, but on the other hand, that we see this backlash. And in the HR spaces, you hear a lot about this as well, initiatives being cut or downsized. So I do think that it's great that actually a lot of partners or even our investors, they specifically ask about the responsible practices. They request us to explain our ESG policies. And I do think that if we are indeed facing this backlash, it helps you stay on the good course. It helps you build accountability, a little bit like, when you want to build a good habit, you do well when you have an accountability buddy. And I do see this continuous conversation and this growth in scrutiny or in requirements from vendors and partners and investors as a good thing to achieve that goal. Absolutely.
Thank you, Joanna. Let's finish on, well, I could say it might be a positive note, but an informative note at least. So, Mike, perhaps, is there any advice you would have for people in our audience today who are wanting to, increase their ESG responsibilities, work with a more sustainable business model?
Yeah, I would say trust your instincts on this, trust your gut, and you normally right. And I think it's become more important for me as I've got older and further into my career that I really want to do the right thing and work for businesses that do the right thing. And I want to know when I leave the office or close my laptop here at the end of the day that I've gone and done the right thing. And therefore, that's a really good guiding principle about how you make decisions. And there's another one which we talk about the Times test, about would you want your practices to be put on the front page of the Times as a headline. And that's often a good gauge to understand whether you should be doing something or whether you shouldn't be doing something. And I think in 99% of the occasions, you can be right on this and trust your instincts and then work around it. So yeah, so that would be my advice.
Thank you, Mike. Joanna, same question. Any advice for our audience today?
I guess first of all, like really listen to people and try to get their perspectives. And the other would be persevere, because I do agree with Mike. Very frequently we have a very good first hunch, but it may be difficult to sell your point or to convince the business that this is the way to go. So if you believe in that what you're doing is right, persevere and keep moving ahead.
Thank you, Joanna. Nick, I'll leave the sort of closing thoughts for you.
Thank you. Well, I'll echo everything I said before as well. But yeah, I would say, don't be daunted by the task at hand as well. Encourage small steps. I don't think there's anything you or I can do to completely change the picture here, but we can start moving in the right direction and having that positive impact. And that's what we try and make core to our company culture is, okay, are we pushing things in the right direction? Have we solved, world hunger? No. But have we fed this many people? Great. Have we solved, the education? No. Or housing crisis? No. But we put roofs over people's heads. And so start small. I think every little part helps. And the way that we do that is really by promoting the right partnerships and collaborating with organizations to leverage existing resources and expertise in sustainable travel and philanthropy. And I think that's important, as well as embracing the transparency. So be open and honest with, the efforts and the challenges that you have as well, and communicate that to your shareholders. Finally, I would say make it core to your company culture. Really make sure that it's part of your identity, and authentically so. I think, the people know that internally, maybe less so externally, because you can have a nice marketing front, but internally everyone feels if that's truly your core, and you care about it. And like one of my favorite sort of companies is Patagonia. I know some of that sort of marketing, but also you look at the owner and you think, wow, okay, that's an example of someone that I want to go buy their product. And that's, I think, a perfect example of where commercialism sort of meets philanthropy and giving back and social environmentalism. So yeah, start small, I think, and make it core to your company culture.
Thank you, Nick. And a big thank you to all of our contributors today, to Nick, to Joanna, to Ed, and to Mike. Lots of really good insights there, and hopefully a lot that our audience can take away with them today. So we've got just a few slides to run through very quickly before we finish. So here we go. So our next webinar is a week today. Sorry, not a week today. It's on Tuesday, the 19th of November. So a little break before the next session. And that's on new channels of distribution, how social media is shaping travel choices. So a very relevant topic right now. Really hope you can join us then too. And the sign up link is in the chat for you now. Before that, the next big event that we're hosting is just less than a month away now, and it's our second annual short-term rental summit here in London, with a raft of high-caliber C-suite speakers and attendees from across the world. And we are offering a discount of £100 off tickets to all attendees on this webinar using the code on the screen now, STRz Summit 100, when directed by visiting the link in the chat. And Ed, I know you're one of our speakers too, so we'll be hearing more of your insights there. For opportunities to work with us, please do contact my colleague Sam. He's our head of growth, using his details on the screen. Great time to be working with us as well on events, on podcasts and webinar content. Sam and I are both going to be in Phoenix, Arizona next week for VRMA International Conference. So I hope to see some of you there. This session is going to remain open for just another 2 minutes with all of the details from the chat. Big thank you again to Logify and Key Data for sponsoring this webinar and our series. A reminder as well that Logify is there's a code STR10 to get 10% off yearly and bi-yearly ultimate and professional plans that we mentioned earlier in the conversation. Thank you again to all of our speakers and to all of you tuning in today. We'll see you all again very soon. Thank you very much, everyone.
Hello, we are International Hospitality Media, or IHM for short. IHM is the #1 brand to engage with decision makers in hospitality and real estate. Our 4 multimedia brands lead their respective sectors with breaking news, comments, trends, and opinions across a variety of multimedia solutions. We provide an inspirational community to connect people through world-class events, webinars, podcasts, award schemes, and much more. But let us share our story of who we are and what we do. Over 10 years ago, Piers and George had a light bulb moment to provide expert opinion, comments, and low-cost digital content. And so, they went on a journey over the past decade, creating media platforms to serve the hospitality and real estate industries. We now have an engaged audience with a reach of over 60,000 monthly visitors across our website, 52,500 in our email database across all sectors, and over 68,000 across our social channels. Everything we do challenges the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. We make things simple and very easy to work with us, and we're a friendly bunch too. We offer creative solutions to help you achieve your business goals. Read, watch, listen, and meet with IHM. Connect with us for a chat today. Just look at some of the brands we have worked with recently.